It's an image emerging daily from the campaign trail. Party leaders speaking to a crowd with a gaggle of supporters smiling behind them, but rarely a dissenter in sight. Carleton University's Christopher Waddell wrote an article this week detailing how he thinks campaign events are changing, sometimes leaving the general public in the rearview mirror. Christopher joins us now from Ottawa. Good to have you with us.
Good morning, Marcy.
So in that iPolitics article, and I want to quote here, Christopher, you say not that long ago, leaders actually spoke at advertised events that invited the public to attend, and now you feel the public's being left out. What are the ramifications in your eyes of that?
Well, the biggest ramification, of course, is that we have party leaders going around the country speaking only to small groups of partisans, generally in a small room. If you told people today that back in 1972, for instance, Pierre Trudeau spoke at Maple Leaf Gardens and had 14 or 15,000 people there, they'd probably be pretty surprised. I even remember covering 1988 election, spending some time on the Conservative campaign with Brian Mulroney, and remember one great evening where they had a big rally in the high school in Montague at the east end of Prince Edward Island. The public was invited to come. It was an opportunity to actually hear the leaders, get close to the leaders and maybe meet them. And it also, though, exposed the leaders to the possibility of people heckling or people yelling things and criticizing the leaders. But politicians are big people, and they should be able to handle that. And in fact, a lot of politicians turn those hecklers to their advantage. But we don't see any of that anymore because partisan events are now, leaders' events are now pretty strictly controlled. The Conservatives more than the other two parties, but the strategy now is to do something for television, which is to put more people in a small room than the room holds, people behind the leader, as you say, and not let the general public involved in the process at all.
The other thing that has changed drastically is the question and answer scrums, as we call them in the journalistic world, when journalists ask politicians questions. That's now part of the main event. It's not a separate. You've covered your fair share of scrums as a journalist, Christopher. Tell us about that and what you see as an issue with that.
Sure. What happened before is the event would take place, whether it was speaking to partisans or whether it was speaking to the public, and then reporters would go and ask questions of the leader after the event, off to the side somewhere or in another room or somewhere else. Parties have now turned that into part of the partisan event. So the problem that occurs is, in fact, you've now got a room full of partisans who are cheering their leader, and you've got reporters questioning the leader in front of all those partisans. So in a funny way, the heckling that used to take place of the leader at some of the public events has now turned to heckling of the media at events when they're asking questions of the leader. And that both can intimidate the media, and the other thing it's designed to do too is to produce images of the leader being applauded by people when he or she answers a question. So you've got this very weird and that works to the benefit of the political parties, at least they believe it does, and that they hope that those clips of the leader answering a question being applauded by people will be seen on newscasts and seen on television and heard on radio. And of course, the audiences there don't know that the people in the audience are actually partisans. They think it might be the general public applauding the leader, and that they think works to their advantage.
Yeah, and we've seen more than one example of the media as target when it comes to political campaigns. Want to talk about the elusive undecided voter and what happens if parties aren't allowing just anybody to show up and there's so much scrutiny. How then do they reach the undecided voter?
Well, they reach the undecided voter different ways these days. They reach them by telephone, they reach them by email, they reach them by quite sophisticated campaigns that pursue individuals and see what their habits are online. They try to reach them by getting them to respond to things on their websites where tell us you agree, send us your email address, and then they collect all this data and they put all this data in their databases, which allows them to determine who their supporters are and who their opponents might be. But unlike databases that are being collected by everyone else, the databases being collected by political parties are completely beyond any rules. You have no idea what parties are collecting about you in terms of information. You have no idea what they're using it for. You have no idea who they're sharing it with. And you have no right to find out anything about that. And that's a real issue as well that the Privacy Commissioner has spent some time looking at. And because what used to be public events has been replaced by private campaigning going around the country and a massive collection of data about individuals that then is being used to target messages directly to individuals. And we've seen a little bit of it. Some of the the man yelling obscenities to Laurie Graham earlier this week and the other reporters is the logical result of the Conservative campaign and what they've been doing over the last 5 or 6 years, which is basically they basically tell stories to their supporters, and the stories they tell their supporters, the myths they tell them, are things like everyone is out to get them. And one of the key groups they believe is out to get them, or they tell their supporters is out to get them, is the media. And there's been lots of fundraising letters, give us money to help fight the media because the media won't tell us our story, they lie, they do all these other things. So it's not surprising in some respect that the end result of closed partisan events, turning media encounters between politicians and the press into part of a structured partisan event, and then firing up your partisans by telling them that the media are the enemy and are lying, that the end result of that is people who are yelling obscenities at people and the whole denigration of the whole political process.
Carleton University School of Journalism's Christopher Waddell joining us from Ottawa this morning. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much.